Welcome to Real Life Counseling, a podcast by The Counseling Corner. I'm Ryan, joined by Dr. Ernie Reilly, licensed clinical social worker and founder of The Counseling Corner. Today, we are unpacking one of the most talked about topics in child counseling, ADHD. We'll explore what it really is, how it shows up differently in kids, and what parents can do to help children feel capable, confident, and understood. I'd also like to welcome back two of our amazing child and play therapists, Amanda Riendeau, licensed clinical social worker, and Andreina Bello, licensed mental health counselor. Let's jump right in. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Sounds great, Ryan.
All right, perfect. All right, so I just want to set the stage and really lay out, because I feel like there is a lot of information out there about ADHD with a lot of people and a lot of opinions. So I really want to figure out what ADHD is and what it isn't. So my first question is actually to Dr. Ernie. When parents hear ADHD, I feel like they often think of hyper kids who can't sit still. But from a clinical perspective, can you maybe ground us on what's actually happening in the brain for a child who might be working through ADHD?
Sure. Thanks for asking, Ryan. I oftentimes say that kids with ADHD, they're like high performance sports cars with low performance brakes. Imagine like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini with bicycle brakes. Lots of fast, but lots of crash. So kids with ADHD, they're got amazing brains. Lots of speed up there. It's just the braking system doesn't work that well. What's really happening is that prefrontal cortex, which we've talked about in other podcasts, other episodes, the prefrontal cortex really is just underpowered. It's just not working as strong as it should. And that the prefrontal cortex is like the thinking boss or the CEO, right? Or maybe you could, in this case, think of it kind of like an air traffic controller. Imagine an air traffic controller who's just kind of dozing off. They're overworked and they're just not, you're right. You're going to see lots of things possibly crash, lots of things not go so well. That CEO or air traffic controller is responsible for deciding what to focus on, filter out distractions, hold instructions, right? That working memory, put on the brakes, sustain mental focus, help us to have sustained mental focus. So that if that CEO isn't working so well, right, is overworked, tired, just not functioning as well, that kid is not going to be able to focus nearly as well. So in the ADHD kid, that's a big struggle that they're having. That prefrontal cortex is kind of underpowered or inconsistent, maybe is another way of putting that. So it's not that they won't focus, right? Kids with ADHD can focus. It's just that it's harder. It's like the spotlight. It's harder to get the spotlight where it needs to and then stay there. It keeps kind of drifting off to other things. And sometimes the reason it drifts is because the dopamine isn't processed quite the same with a child with ADHD. So dopamine helps us stay attentive. And so if it's not processing correctly, the child will end up shifting. And it's sort of like the shifter or the channel changer keeps shifting to the immediate, the exciting, the, urgent,
Whatever's getting
really
that dopamine
mean
hit.
Things, right? The things that produce high levels of dopamine, it'll keep shifting to those things rather than the things that require sustained mental focus, the things that are boring, the things that are long, the things that are really difficult to stay for all of us. It's difficult for all of us, but with a kid with ADHD, their brains are just functioning different. So they're just having more of a struggle. So if they're having a lot of that, that's even harder. If they're having a little bit of that, it's harder, but it's not quite as hard as the kid who's got a really severe case of ADHD. So that kind of explains a little bit of the science. It's not that kids can't focus, they can. And in fact, with kids with ADHD, sometimes kids will say, I have ADHD, so I can't focus. I'll say, no, you have ADHD. It's just harder for you to focus. And we just got to work harder at it. But for parents, I do let them know it is harder. So you can't expect it to be just as easy. Some
Mm,
parents know that because they have ADHD themselves. A lot of kids who have ADHD have parents who have ADHD. So it's not a kid isn't able to focus. They are. It's just harder. And it's not a kid choosing not to focus, although sometimes they are, but just like anybody. But it is that it's actually harder for them. Hope that helps a little bit with the science
yeah.
part.
No, that makes a lot of sense because I think anybody could feel like, yeah, I have trouble focusing, especially when it's like long term or this is a really boring or mundane task. But it is physically more difficult because of the
Yeah,
anatomy
parents
of the
parents
brain.
say parents say all the time that they can't have ADHD. They focus when they play video games. Yeah, but
Mm,
video games all about dopamine. They're extremely fast. Put them maybe in a slow moving golf video game, they're probably going to struggle more. Put them in a
yeah.
fast moving, lots of pixelated stuff going on, and they're going to be able to focus easier, just like anyone can, but certainly a kid with ADHD can. Their brains move super fast. Again, high performance sports car, low performance brakes.
Yeah, so they're probably really good at those types of things as well, just because of the way that the
Yeah.
brain is. So of course they're going to want more of it. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, my next question is for Andreina. Now that we kind of have a baseline of what ADHD is and what's happening up here in your sessions, when you're meeting a child, maybe even for the first time, what are the first signs that might suggest or might make you think that ADHD could be on the table for this child?
Okay, when I first meet with the client, with the child, I start noticing maybe like difficulty with the transitioning from one activity to the other, maybe like wanting to be hyper focused on one thing only and then having trouble kind of redirecting towards a different game or maybe getting bored really easily. I notice a lot that, sometimes it seems like the child is not present. Like when I'm playing with my client and he's just maybe not having trouble, following directions or not maybe getting the game, but it's not because of trouble, understanding, but it's just not being fully present in the game, invested. This alone doesn't mean that the child might have ADD, but if it's a pattern that repeats itself, maybe like in school and at home, and I notice like, by the third session, it continues to be a struggle, then there might be some ADHD related symptoms there.
Got it. Okay. Amanda, I'm curious as you're seeing things like this in your sessions, do they show up differently for boys versus girls?
Yes, not all of the time, but there is plenty of research out there that will kind of show you. And often when I have kiddos come in related to ADHD, I do typically see boys more than girls. Not that boys are inherently more likely to have ADHD per se, but it presents more physically. So when we think about ADHD, there used to be two categories that people kind of understand. ADHD, meaning attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and what used to be called ADD, which
Hmm,
was just the attention deficit disorder minus the hyperactivity. Now it's all under one umbrella, but essentially what you're getting is the two pieces, the hyperactive or the inattentive. And then there's a combination of both, which is very common. Girls are more likely to present with the inattentive pieces than the hyperactive.
hmm,
So when we're talking about girls, we might not see that they're disruptive in the classroom. We might not see that they can't sit still or they're having trouble focusing. What we might see is the opposite. We're going to see perfectionism. We're going to see they're seeking validation in what they're doing and that positive reinforcement. Am I doing this okay? Is this enough? Not wanting to upset other people. We might see the daydreaming happening in the classroom, but they're still able to keep up. And so we're missing some girls with ADHD because they're not all running out of their seats or, jumping to answer a question before they raise their hand or getting into emotional spats with their peers or their siblings. Girls are kind of missed because they're more quiet with it. I call it the more internal side of ADHD. And girls are taught, right? We have to present a certain way to the
Mm-hmm.
outside world, and we're calm and we're polite and we're meaningful and purposeful with what we do. Or boys, we kind of expect them to be gruff and kind of everywhere. And so those roles get played out in what we see with ADHD.
So I'm curious, what are you looking for in a session with a girl to say, oh, there might be some ADHD here? How do you catch it?
So when we're looking at inattentive type of ADHD, and boys can have inattentive too. It's not right exclusively male is hyperactive and inattentive is female. But we might look at they were doing really well in school until a certain point. We might see where they're saying, I'm forgetting a lot, or I'm suddenly really struggling with this particular thing, or they're not doing some of the same social experiences that maybe other girls in their age group might be doing, right? So they're going out and doing sleepovers, or they're jumping into every club and activity at school. They may be more internal. And sometimes we mix that up a little bit with anxiety or social struggles when there might be something else going on. There's also other pieces of impulsive decisions. Oh, I can't do this math problem, so I'm just not going to do my math homework at all. There's still some of the impulsive behaviors that are more matched with hyperactivity that may show up in girls on that inattentive spectrum side of ADHD.
Interesting. Okay. So I know we probably have parents, or probably our main listeners, at least on this topic. So, Andreina, I'm curious to hear from you. What kinds of emotions do parents typically bring in to the first session? Are you meeting with frustrated parents? Are they feeling hopeless? I'm wondering if they're going to be able to maybe relate to what you are seeing from even clients that you've seen recently.
Yeah, it's always a mix of emotions. You know, the first one is worry because they
Right.
think that there's something that might be wrong with the child. Another one, yes, it's frustration. They feel like normally when parents come to therapy is because they've tried everything and nothing has worked, all kinds of strategies. So yes, they're frustrated. Another thing that they might be going through is like shame, feelings of shame, because maybe they've been judged by family members or other friends, that they think, you can't control your child or you can't have your child to behave. So I meet with quite a bit of defensive parents that, they might feel judged. Yeah, but a lot of the times, I mostly see hope. They're still, they still feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And with the right support, the right guidance, they're still open to receiving tools and help. So yes,
Good.
those are the emotions.
I'm glad to hear that. And I think I'm hoping that that's somewhat a symptom of the fact that ADHD, I feel like, has been less and less stigmatized, and the treatment and care for it has become less and less stigmatized over probably even like the last decade, where, the neurotypical, neurodivergent, I hear language like that all the time
All the
now.
time, yes.
Yeah. And I even I'm having conversations like that with some of my friends who have 3-year-olds that they're worried about. So I'm glad to hear that parents are coming in with hope and not just, I guess I just have one of those kids. I don't hear that anymore. And I'm glad to hear that you don't either, because I don't think that is even a thing, right? These kids have Ferrari brains. They just need to learn how to drive. So, I want to move on to our next segment, and we are on episode 10, and we just kind of have this theme that has happened over our podcast life so far, where we have been busting myths, because we think that there are a lot of myths associated with therapy and counseling in general, and so we want to be intentional about it, and we're going to have a mini myth busting session here. So I'm going to give you a comment that I've heard or I've seen a lot, and you can tell me if there is any meaning to it or if it's a pure myth and you want to correct it. Does that sound good?
Yep, we're ready.
All right.
Let's do it.
Right. Number one, ADHD is caused by too much screen time.
That one's a myth.
Okay.
Now, and I say that because it's not caused by screen time. Now, is there an association with ADHD and lots of screen time? Maybe. And then we bring that up because Dr. Ernie mentioned the dopamine hit, right? And there's so much stuff for kids to get into, YouTube and video games and music and creating and all of these things that they have right at their fingertips. But ADHD is not caused by those things, but they are kind of associated because it does reinforce some of what they're looking and what they're needing in their little brains to feel connected to their.
So
Yeah.
I'm actually
Ryan,
curious.
one quick thought on that.
Yeah.
A while ago, you remember this show SpongeBob?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, SpongeBob SquarePants. They actually did a study where they tested sustained mental focus after watching SpongeBob. And even after just watching 6 minutes, or I think it was 6 or 8 minutes or something of watching SpongeBob, your average kid's focus did go down. So screen time is impacting all of us. But like Amanda's saying, it's not causing ADHD. It's just you already got a kid that's struggling. Screen time is going to make it harder.
It's fuel on embers is what it sounds like. So
Yes.
I'm curious, Amanda, these companies are building these tools addictive by nature. Like that's the strategy and the success of the business model. So what are some tips maybe that you've given to parents to help? Because we can't avoid them, right? That they've successfully embedded themselves into our everyday lives. Everybody has one in their pocket. So are there tips maybe that you consistently end up relying on to help ADHD kids and their parents manage screen time in a healthy way?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily specific to screen time, but just
Okay.
in general, some of those very stimulating activities. Right now, I highly encourage all kids to be creative, involved in sports, do things with peer groups, right? That might be clubs or mentoring programs or anything where they're getting their little brains active, busy, and stimulated. But like with screen time, like with chores, and I imagine this is something that we'll probably touch base as we go along in the podcast today, of the importance of recognizing some of the developmental aspects that come with ADHD and kiddos in general. Or for context, if your kid is 6 years old, okay, their attention span may, at peak performance, be somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes. Then we tack on an ADHD brain, which is wired a little differently, has a little bit more of that kind of, like Ernie was saying, really fast car with maybe not so good brakes. That attention span is almost cut in half. Right? So if we're expecting a 5, 6-year-old to maintain attention for more than 5 minutes, they're gone to maybe 3 minutes in. And that could be asking a lot. So managing things in time blocks, having consistent schedules, having an expectation laid out for them so that they know what to expect, is kind of what I'm looking like. So screen time is okay in moderation, right?
Okay.
And let's make sure that what they're doing is also age appropriate and all the other things that come with that. You can build it into their routine, but it needs to be in an appropriate amount of time. We don't want to just hand them a tablet, let them go to town the whole weekend, right? That happens. But then when it comes Monday, we're going to be fighting with that kid to get ready for school because he just spent the last 2 days on a tablet watching YouTube videos.
Yeah. We could probably do a whole episode on this topic. I think there's so much great research out there. Ernie, your comment about SpongeBob got me thinking, right? We've got little kids, they're onto the little kids show time, and Coco Melon was the talk of my little group for a long time, like a year or two ago, because the research started coming out that they were purposefully changing the frame and image right as the dopamine spike ended in the kids. And so they would hit a new one and they knew exactly when to change the frame. exactly which colors to use to change to. And it was actually engineered that way. It was an engineered show for addiction of kids as early as 2. And so there's been this rebirth of 90s era cartoons for toddlers because it's actually still like stabilizing them. And I just thought it was so fascinating, and I want to make sure people knew that that's what Coco Melon and new shows like that are doing. And you can find all those old shows like Barney, even Thomas the Tank Engine. The kids love them just as much. They're all on YouTube and they're all free. You don't even need a subscription. So if you're looking for an alternative and you see that in your kids, maybe check that out. Okay, sorry.
Great idea.
Commercial break over. Myth number 2: kids with ADHD. Oh man, I've heard this one forever. Kids with ADHD just need more discipline.
That is one of like the biggest misconceptions, that kids with ADHD, they just need more discipline. Actually, no kid wants to misbehave. Like kids want to be accepted. They want to be liked. They actually internalize the role of, the bad kid, and they will tell you,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm a bad kid." So, you can have the most calm parent, the one that has read all the books, the one seasoned parent, and you still have a child that struggles with attention and impulsivity and self-regulation because it's actually a neurological disorder. So it's hard for children to filter all the distractions, so that's that's
Can you help us understand the role of discipline in the kids' lives as they learn how to live with ADHD? Because they can't live a discipline-free life, right? So how does it fit healthily into a treatment or life plan structure?
right. Well, I approach it more as like structure.
Okay.
Kids, it's fairly known that, kids need structure more so than discipline because, maybe discipline as well, but, it can be seen in a negative connotation. You would have to define what discipline is. So children, with structure, you can maybe show them more visual, maybe like a schedule, maybe like a behavior charts. Like I mentioned in the last podcast, I work with a lot of behavior charts. And
Mm,
so, yeah, those are the things that you can do to maybe teach more discipline,
okay.
redirection, mirroring your own behavior.
Ryan, one way to think about discipline is just discipline is intended to teach. It's a teaching technique.
Guide.
So you're trying to teach using discipline. It's just one way of teaching though. And you definitely don't want to be trying to teach a kid in a wheelchair how to run up a flight of stairs.
Hmm.
They can't run up a flight of stairs. So why are you going to discipline that issue? You want to discipline the areas that make sense to discipline and not discipline the areas that make no sense, because the whole goal is to teach. You're trying to teach this kid how to do better in these particular areas. Every kid needs discipline, but they need it wise discipline. And as Andreina was saying, structure, right? Mechanisms in place, trying to help the kids stay focused by using rewards and things of that sort to help the child. Those are probably even more important and more ones that you're going to lean on even more with ADHD.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for unpacking that for us. I'm sure we could probably have a follow up on that one as well. All right, next myth. They'll grow out of it eventually. It's just a phase.
Mm-mm.
There was a train of thought when that was, in fact, believed. That has now been proven to be false. ADHD is one of the things that I spend a lot of time in. That's where a lot of my clients are. And I will say now, I may even have more adults than children that are diagnosed with ADHD.
Hmm.
Ernie mentioned it earlier that what's often happening is kids are being brought in and being diagnosed with ADHD. And then we're realizing, right, parents of ADHD kiddos often also have ADHD. Not guaranteed, but it's likely. And so we're actually running into where it's happening, where we're diagnosing the kiddo and the adult parent is also being diagnosed very near the same amount of time when they didn't realize they had it. Or they had the mind, oh, I was treated as a kid. And then they told me, oh, suddenly I turn 18 and the ADHD light switch turns off. That makes no sense. That doesn't happen, right? What's happening actually is as we're getting older, we are learning some of what I call the M's. We're learning some mindfulness, we're learning some management, and we're learning some masking. So those behavior, we're just adapting, right? We're learning to navigate the space that we have and the brain that we have to work with it in. And so it doesn't go away. It just, we adapt and we work with what we have. And so do some of the things, some of the symptoms, maybe impulsivity or some of the shame and the guilt and the feelings of rejection and disappointment. Do we learn how to manage those better? Maybe. Do we overcompensate? Those are masking skills that people develop. And there's actually a whole assessment for adult ADHD related to masking and how we've developed these coping skills to manage the ADHD symptoms that we have as adults that we have to kind of manage in order to keep functioning as an adult and make it in the workforce and in our family and at home and all these spaces. So no, you don't grow out of it. You just learn how to manage it.
Interesting. Okay, I'm so glad we did this segment because I've got 3 follow-up episodes already planned in my brain. All right, the last one. Medication is the only real solution.
Yeah, I'll jump in and handle that one. I would say, first of all, that's absolutely false. It's not the only real solution. There are many, many solutions. Let me jump back a little bit to what Amanda was saying. Oftentimes, also, what adults will do is they'll choose their careers and structure their life around things. Like you're going to see less accountants unless they have ADHD medication or something like that. You're probably going to see less accountants with ADHD because sustained mental focus is a big deal with accounting. Maybe less surgeons, more businessmen, salesmen, entertainers, right? Where that high energy and that fast pace, fast brain, less breaks needed, more crash allowed. You don't want your surgeon crashing and you don't want your accountant crashing, but you don't mind, an entertainer or a salesman being a little bit more high energy. So medication can help with those. So if someone has medication, it may be that they could go into some of those fields because the medication helped them put on the brakes. Medication is kind of like brake fluid, just helps those brakes work better. You're still going to need to do driving instructions. You're still going to, you don't want to lose that fast brain. You want the fast brain. You just want the brakes to work better. So I tend to have a bias against medication. I'd rather not use medication unless we absolutely need it, not just with ADHD, but pretty much with anything, with myself, with my kids. It's up to a parent as to what approach they want to take. But I find most parents tend to not want to use medication unless they absolutely need it. However, with severe ADHD or some moderate ADHD, medication really can be quite a blessing. It really can be a life changer. When you don't need it, you definitely don't want to do it. And you learn all sorts of skills, understanding how your brain works, being able to work around that, work through that, develop the different abilities. That really is the better way to do it. And then if you also need medication, great, you can add that. You definitely want to do. In fact, research shows us that medication alone is not nearly as effective as therapy plus medication. Therapy is quite effective, and therapy plus medication is very effective with ADHD.
I love that because it's not a broken brain. It's just a brain that works differently.
Yes,
and it has different strengths and different skills. The same way all of us have different strengths and skills, and if we can learn to use our strengths to our advantage and work around the weaknesses, then we can exist and succeed just like anyone else. So
Absolutely.
I love that perspective. That's very helpful. So thank you. All right, I want to. I really appreciated the insight and the view into a play therapy session, because I think that's a new topic maybe for a lot of people. And so I want to do that again, hear from you what that is like, but specifically for clients with ADHD. So Amanda, obviously, without sharing details for client anonymity, can you describe what a play therapy session looks like for one of your clients who is working through ADHD? What's going on in the room, and are you reading it? Are you guiding it? Just maybe let's pretend we're sitting there with you.
Well, and funny enough, you guys are, sitting in is actually something that I built in a little bit more into sessions when I'm working with kids with ADHD and bringing the parents in, right? Because
Hmm.
a lot of times the kiddos are not going to be able to implement everything that we might be looking at to add those extra support pieces in. Parents are really going to be in charge of some of those things, right? Setting our schedules and setting expectations and modeling the type of responses that we want to see and practicing coping skills when we're feeling incredibly dysregulated or overwhelmed. But a play therapy session for ADHD really doesn't look a whole lot different than some of my other sessions with kids maybe. Right, the first session is going to look like I kind of let them scope out the space, get a feel for what they like, what they don't like. This is like when we're usually playing like 20 questions. What's your favorite food? What don't you want to eat? If, mom gave you the front of the house, what time would you go to bed? Those kinds of things to get them comfortable with the space and to get comfortable about talking about things that maybe they don't typically share. But then we talk about transitioning and using their play, because we talked about it on the last episode, how kids play out how they're feeling and the thoughts that they're having or the experiences that they're going through. So we really use that a lot to navigate the space to figure out, how do they feel when mom is saying, I know you can do better than this on your spelling words. You just put in that little bit more. I don't understand how you can spend so much time playing video games, but you can't seem to remember to take the trash out. Or you're always, picking fights with your, whatever the case is. Those kids are feeling some way about that. I can't remember the specific percentage, but it was something absurd, like 150 times. The kids with ADHD will hear some of those negative things from family members, parents, siblings, teachers. Oh, I know that you can do better than what you're doing. This is just, I hear that 150 times more than a non-ADHD brain over the lifespan. And think about how they're internalizing things. So we use play to really get down to how they feel about how their brain is wired differently and how it's benefiting them in some spaces and how it's not, so that I can figure out ways that they will be willing and able to implement into their space. A 5-year-old can tell me, yeah, I'm not going to remember that. I'm definitely going to need mom's help. They can tell me that. The same way as a 16-year-old can say, you know what, I really need alarms on my phone to help me remember that when I get home, I'm going to have, an alarm that says I'm home, 10 minutes to have a snack and to decompress, an alarm that goes off 10 minutes later to tell me to start my phone. 5-year-olds can tell me those things too. Might sound a little different, might not be particularly coherent in how that all matches, but I let them drive for the most part, so that when I need to take a step and kind of steer the car a little bit, they're comfortable with allowing me to do that and willing to let me, so that they're in control of what their life is going to look like. The kiddos are the ones that are going to have to live with it. They're going to have to learn how to manage this and help them learn the skills so that they can make this work to their best benefit. Not me, not mom, not teacher. They are. So I let them be in control as much as it's appropriate in those spaces.
That's great. So I want to double click though into one thing you said because it just kind of caught my attention and my heart. Andreina, how do you help a child who feels frustrated by their energy and is hearing those negative comments a lot about their attention span or just kind of their performance? How do you help them find confidence again?
Right, like you mentioned before, I start by telling them, that their brain is not broken, that their brain isn't bad. It just works differently. They learn differently. I focus on, their strengths. Like I normally during my therapy sessions, we work on like small wins. The idea is to make them feel capable again, because somewhere along the line they feel like maybe they're a failure, or like their challenges are personal failures, when in reality it's just a way, they're just learning how to live life. So struggling with self-regulation. So when it comes to strengths, I focus on like, okay, let's see what your qualities are: curiosity, your energy, things that are normally labeled as negative, or you're too nosy, or you're
Mm.
too hyper. So they internalize this as bad, when in reality it can be, like many people say, a superpower, like these traits. So yeah,
I love that.
that's
Yeah.
how it. Mm.
Because it's hypercharged, right? And so it can really be a superpower. That I've got an adult friend who probably he says it's ADHD. It's undiagnosed, but it's pretty obvious. Um, but he gets so focused on something new that he really enjoys, and he just gets insanely good at it in a weekend, maybe 2 weeks. And he'll be the best one at it in our group of something that we all do that he has never done before. And then eventually, a month or two later, he'll lose interest and move on and find a new thing and become the best at that. It's incredible how quickly he can just context shift and then be excellent. And it's so clear that brain is just working on a whole different level. So I'm curious though, Dr. Ernie, when you are treating ADHD in kids, what's the larger goal? Are you going specifically for behavior changes? Is it more the self-understanding side? Is it a mixture of both? What's your approach? What's your hope?
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a tricky question in the sense that good ADHD treatment isn't just behavior change or self understanding. It's both. So it's both of those things. Plus a third thing, skill building in a brain friendly environment. So as kids feel more competent, they feel more confident, right? They develop more competencies. They become more confident. And as they understand themselves better and their environment understands them better, then they just blossom. When I use that Ferrari brain metaphor, when I use that when a kid comes in, they're coming in usually kind of slumped down a little. They're hyper and everything, but they're a little bit not feeling, you can see it. You can see they're not feeling that great about themselves. Because if they're coming in, there's probably a decent amount of stuff going on. So when I help them see that they've got a super high powered brain, they're just like, whoa, someone's
Mhm.
saying something great about me. Low power breaks, right? So we talk about that piece too. And now we got to work on how do you manage that? So there's really a whole bunch of self understanding, and there's a whole bunch of skill building. And then we're working on the behavior change in the sense that we want emotional regulation. We want a kid to be able to do these things in life so that they can get along well with other kids, so they can maintain themselves in classrooms. So keep in mind that classrooms were not really set up. They weren't designed for kids with ADHD,
Yeah.
especially the hyperactive kid with ADHD. They weren't designed, right? They'd be better off on a ranch, at a dude ranch, or someplace where they can do lots of stuff and have lots of energy. But we're asking them to sit in a classroom, sit quiet like a church mouse, right? And just do your work. That's really hard for any kid. It's hard, especially hard for kids with ADHD.
Yeah. Man, that I can get fired up about that. So that's episode number 5 that we're gonna do follow up. Um, okay. All right. So in our next segment is going to be parent question of the week, a common question that I hear from parents or parents send in to us. And I'd love to dig into this one because I've heard it a few times. How do we know if our child actually has ADHD or is just distracted or energetic like most other kids? I've heard and even been asked that from some friends a few times already. So I'd love to dig into this one a bit. Andreina, what should those parents be looking for in day-to-day behavior that can maybe help them differentiate between this could be an ADHD thing or this is just a kid being a kid?
Right. I just tell parents to look for patterns, not just moments, because all kids get distracted. All kids have temper tantrums, just the fact that a child is having difficulty with transitions doesn't mean he's automatically ADHD. So anything that disrupts dysfunction, that affects their functioning, if it's and then I ask them to actually take note on like how often this is happening, and if it's related to impulse control, to self-regulation, to losing things all the time, forgetting things, and like I said, looking for the pattern and the frequency.
Okay. Is there, Amanda, specific patterns or context that you see in the therapy room that that maybe if a parent is playing with their child that they should be looking for?
Well, I think from a clinical standpoint, right, we have this diagnostic criteria, we have this list of symptoms that also includes age requirements and timing and environments that are impacted, right? So for an ADHD diagnosis, we don't want to just see, oh, this behavior only happens at home with our siblings, right? We're not seeing any disruption with school. We're not seeing any impact on the sports fields. We're not seeing any concerns in any other space. It's only happening at home with siblings, right? That could be just sibling rivalry. That could be there's some need not getting met and the kiddo doesn't know how to put that into words. If we're talking specifically about focus and we're going back and leaning back on the screen time thing, I don't understand how we sit down to do our homework. Maybe we already have a schedule for what that looks like after school. And, he's got 5 math problems. And by the first one, he's just off to the races, right? As soon as I turn my back, he's left the building and he's off doing something else. Um, Again, we want to take into context, how old is this kiddo, right? Are we expecting them to sit for 30 minutes unsupervised and sit down quietly and do a worksheet? That's not going to happen. They just did that for the last 8 hours. No 6-year-old's going to want to do that when they get home. The environment also plays a role. I'm not going to want to sit down and do 5 math problems when I know that my Barbie dream house is right in the next room. And I have been dying to play out this other thing that's been going on at school. We have to take some of those into consideration. It has to be in multiple environments to be clinical. And we have to have so many of those symptoms. And Audrina did a really good job of kind of talking about some of the patterns that would look like. Those patterns have to be in multiple spaces and significant enough that they're impacting life, not just making mom and dad uncomfortable, not just necessarily annoying the teacher. It has to be significant enough to be causing disruption that leads to this is more than just annoying or I'm worried about this. This has to be disrupting to the point where we're saying this could have some really negative consequences if we let all of this continue to go on for too much longer.
Okay. So as we go down this path, right, and we start moving toward, and we like start using terms like diagnosis, right, and assessment, Dr. Ernie, how should parents be approaching assessment without feeling like, or even maybe accidentally putting a label on their child?
Yeah, good question. So it makes me think of you remember that movie, The Lion King? Do you
Of course.
remember Simba, right? And he wanders off and he ends up with Pumbaa and Timon,
Uh-huh.
right? And do you remember they're eating grubs? They're eating the worms and the stuff that they find under. And he's like, ah, yeah, because he's not made to eat that. He's a lion. if you didn't know he's a lion, you wouldn't know. You'd think, let's make him eat the worms. But lions aren't made to eat worms. So we're not slapping a label, right, or a sticker on a kid. What we're trying to do is figure out how they function best. We're trying to articulate and assess what this kid struggles with and what they do well in and how their brain works best. So if you didn't know that he's a lion, you're going to try to make him eat worms. If you know he's a lion, you set him up to eat what lions eat. So zebras and such, I guess. Whatever.
Yep.
So assessment isn't about what's wrong with my kid. It's about figuring out how my kid functions best.
Yeah. And what's best for my kid.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, our next section, I'm calling Therapy Tools in 60 Seconds. So for the parents who are on this road or think they might even be on this road and want to try some stuff out with their kid, I'd love it if each of you could just share one practical tool the parents could try this week to help their child focus or self-regulate that maybe they haven't thought of before. So Amanda, what's one thing families could start doing tonight?
This might cover kind of all bases in emotional regulation and focus and attention and recognizing strengths and struggles. Because sometimes our strengths are in fact our struggles and our struggles are in fact is focusing our nightly conversation on acknowledging, hey, what's one thing that went well today? What's one thing that didn't go well today? What's something that happened today that made you feel really excited? And what's one thing that made you feel maybe disappointed today? And not just ask the kiddo, right? Because again, we're being age appropriate. Your 6-year-old might not know quite what the answers are to those specific questions. But if he hears mom, share. Here's dad, share. Here's older brother, share. And here's grandma, share. Whoever's in the house also share those spaces. We're one, teaching them it's okay to talk about our feelings. 2, we're teaching them that it's okay that we maybe had a rough day or we had a rough patch during the day. And that doesn't always define the entire day. They're just moments in time. And so that's something that very easy can be implemented tonight and going forward. It's very similar to the identifying feelings that I talked about in the last podcast that pretty much all of my families get as one of their first homework assignments, because it gets the conversation started on these things are going well, these things are not. Here's where I'm struggling. Here's where I'm not, to help us better understand what's really happening in your kiddo's head.
I love that. That's a great idea. I'm going to take that. We already do a little bit of that by accident in my household, but now we're going to do that even more on purpose. And episode 6 is going to be about bringing back the dinner table. Andreina, what's a technique that you teach kids in sessions that parents maybe could mirror at home?
Yes, I do this all the time, basically, and with parents. I break tasks into small doable steps. And I tell the parents, and like instead of telling them, clean your room, and then to them, it means putting everything under the bed and just making it look neat, put away the trash, bring the plates back out into the kitchen, and making lists. I know it sounds simple, but normally, because we're living busy lives, parents forget, to sometimes take the moment and to teach their kids, how they want the kids to clean the room. Because in the parents' heads, they have an idea of how their rooms should look like. But in the kids' head, they're not reading their parents' minds. So it's just being specific about instructions.
Clear expectations, I think, is a theme of healthy relationships in general. All right, Dr. Ernie, how can parents model attention and follow through in their own behavior for these kids?
Yeah, great question, Ryan. So one of the things that you can think about is kids don't just do what we say or listen just to what we say. They listen and copy what we do. So if you think of your brain as maybe like a live demonstration show, maybe like a cooking show, the cooking show, they don't just show up with the cake and say it's done. They show you how to make the cake or make the souffle or make whatever it is, right? They show you, like Andreina was talking about, they show you the steps. In addition to that, as a parent, you may also, kids don't necessarily do what you expect. They do what you inspect. So you need to kind of watch and help them. But one of the things as you're modeling, you can be showing them how to do it. And one of the things that I talk about is that with kids usually see us when we have it all together, which is important for kids to see when we have it together. That is an important thing. They oftentimes also see us when we lose it, right? We lost focus or we lost control, impulse control, right? We lose it. That's also, it's not why we do it, nor should it be why we do it, but it's also important for kids to see, because then they get to see what you do after what you do, how you repair it, what you do. But for kids with ADHD, it's really, really important. They see this other piece, the kind of in between, when you could have lost it, but you didn't. What did you do? How did you do that? Because if they just see you when you have it together or see you when you lose it, having it together can feel like, I have no idea how you did that.
Yeah.
Just watching someone do a cool gymnastics move or an awesome move on a surfboard or skateboard, and I have no idea how that just happened. I don't even know how to start. But if someone breaks it down and they show you, so that in between is, here, I almost lost it. I was driving in traffic, someone cut me off. I almost lost control in my anger. But what I did is I turned on the radio. I listened to some music. I calmed myself. I did this, this, and this. So if we could show kids, yes, show them when we got it together, show them when we lose it. Again, that's not our goal. We're not setting out to do that, but we show them what you do after what you do. And then show them when you could lose it or you almost lost it or you're having trouble focusing, what you did. So turn your brain sort of into a live demonstration show. That really can help kids. Sort of like that co-regulation that we talked about, a couple of weeks ago. You calm, they calm.
Yeah.
You help them focus by you focusing and you showing them how to do it. And like Andreina said, you break that down into steps.
Those were great. And so I'm going to be trying to apply all of them. And I'm sure our listeners as well. I'm wondering though, from everybody, I'm going to go around the table. I want you to just complete this sentence. The one main thing I want the parent of a child with ADHD to leave this episode with is. So I feel like we've covered a ton of ground in a very short amount of time. But if there's one thing that this parent is going to walk away from their phone with, what would you like that to be? And Amanda, I'll start with you.
The one thing I would want parents of a potentially ADHD kid to know is the statement I kind of made earlier, right? Sometimes what we think are weaknesses are in fact strengths. And sometimes our strengths are our weaknesses. And we have to help our kiddos figure that part out and be okay with all of it.
Great. I love that one. Okay. Andreina, you're next.
I would tell a parent, that their kids' challenges and struggles are not a reflection of their parenting, that they need tools and the right support and not shame.
Wonderful.
That's what I would.
All right, Dr. Ernie, bring it home.
All right. Yeah. So one of the things I would probably say is your child isn't a problem to fix. Your child is an amazing gift, right? High energy, wonderful kid. But their brain may work a little different than how you expect it to work or how another kid's brain might work. That's all. You just figure that out and help them, just like you figure out any other strength or any other weakness or any other difference that we all have.
Great.
Sounds
all right.
good?
I think that's great. And I'm encouraged for, kids with ADHD and their families. I think this group is a fantastic resource for them. I hope they use you guys, because I would. I want to end our episode with a small challenge for any of those parents listening. I'd love for us to, if they want to build focus for their child or build their child's confidence this week, what's one simple thing each of you would recommend they try at home? So this will be our parent challenge of the week. One simple thing you'd want a parent to try at home this week. Amanda, why don't you start us off?
There are so many,
I know.
but I think if we go thinking about some of the things, right? There's the attention focus and emotional regulation, right? So I would say spend 5 minutes talking with your kiddo and give them an opportunity in that space to kind of make one choice, right? Give them an option. Do we have snack or do we, have our 5 minutes or 10 minutes of downtime? Which one would you choose? Right. Now they're going to get both, obviously, at some point, but give them an opportunity to have a little bit of say in what that routine is going to start looking like.
Great. Okay, that's a good one. Andreina, you're next.
I would probably, suggest for them to maybe like set a timer and, maybe go home, set the timer at home and clean their room with their child, both, and set some expectations as to how they would like the room to be clean for next time. And maybe repeat that with other tasks.
That's a good one. That good patterns to build, even as a family. All right, Dr. Ernie, what's yours?
I think I'll piggyback a little on Andreina's, and I'll kind of do two slightly different versions of something. One is just called like the 10-minute focus buddy. So you're sort of setting a timer and you're with the child while they do their tasks for 10 minutes. And you just kind of sit there with them while they're doing it. You're not, getting on them. You're just sort of being there as a support for them while they do some homework or, that piece or cleaning the room a little, the section of the room maybe, or packing tomorrow's backpack or something along that line. So you set the timer for 10 minutes and then you kind of slowly, just sit there with them, helping them stay on task, but you're not just sitting staring at them and you're also not getting on them and you're also not doing it for them. You're just sort of there supporting them. So another version or slightly different version of that is if, let's say you had a kid, and I'm just going to say for simplicity's sake, let's say they had an hour's worth of homework to do. Let's say you figure out what your child's focus, my child can focus about 10 minutes. Let's just say that they can focus about 10 minutes for simplicity's sake. Younger kids, it's going to be much less, and the homework time is going to be much less. But for simplicity, an hour, and they can focus about 10 minutes. Then do about 10 minutes while you're sitting with them, and then have them take a 2-minute break, 10 minutes, 2-minute break, 10 minutes, 2-minute break, 10 minutes, 2-minute break, 10 minutes. And now you've got an hour. 2 minutes is enough time for them to refocus, shake things off a little. You're not having them go and watch TV for 2 minutes. That makes no sense. Maybe go to the bathroom, maybe get a drink, shake it off, breathe, right? Okay, now let's do the next thing. And when they know they just have to do 10 minutes, they can do 10 minutes. We just have to do that 5 times. We're going to get little breaks in between. And you're sitting there right next to them. So both of those are some techniques they could start tonight trying. And they can really help your child learn to accomplish these things and have them broken down into sections and know that they're supported, loved, cared for, understood. Those can be some helpful things.
That timer technique is something I use. I didn't know that was a technique for this. I use that just in my day-to-day. And I found there's an entire genre of videos that have that timer built on YouTube that play background music. And they have a timer. It's for 10 minutes. And then there's a 2-minute break. And then a 10-minute, and they transition between scenes and music for it. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's really neat. I did not know that. And I'm going to be using that even more now. Well, I think we are just about at time. So I think we'll wrap there. Thank you so much for a great conversation, everybody. I learned a lot. I'm hopeful that our listeners will have as well.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, at the Counseling Corner, just so our listeners know, we believe every child deserves to feel understood and equipped to thrive. If you're concerned about your child's focus or behavior, or just think it might be helpful to have another caring voice speaking into their lives, then feel free to visit us at thecounselingcorner.net or give us a call at 407-434-4968 and schedule a session with one of our great therapists here at our Orlando, Claremont, or Orange City offices. If you want more helpful content like this from these real experts in the world of mental health, then subscribe to our show on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and you can follow The Counseling Corner on Instagram or Facebook. Also, if there's a family that came to mind or friends that may be on an ADHD journey with their kids, please be sure to share this episode. And if you can, leave us a review. It will really help us to reach and impact more people with these messages of hope, education, encouragement, and guidance as we navigate whatever life is throwing at us together. But until next time, take care of yourself, your family, and the people you love. We'll see you with a new episode on the other side of Thanksgiving. Thank you again, everybody. It was good to talk to you.